Hello everybody, it's Mark Pereira from the Nornis Society. I'm here just to talk about some things today. We're going to talk about some of the debates that we've been having. We've been having some debates on Facebook. We had some videos criticizing our work here on YouTube. And we've had some people, talking about the different things that we're doing and wanting to know what we're all about and what's happening, right? Now, the reason why I wanted to make this video is not to make any personal attacks on anybody. That's not what I'm about. That's not what I do. That's not what the Nornis Society does. We present academic research. We present what we are doing. We are the epic school of mythology, right? And so our epic school, the idea of developing a religious epic for us is what we're striving for. And so what we built was basically a foundation, okay? And so a lot of people have come to us and they're asking questions. They're asking, like, why do we use the term sacred text? And that's the first thing I want to address here and talk about, because that seems to be a point of contention for a lot of people, okay? They think that we're trying to sort of mimic Christianity or try to mimic a Bible, try to create like an Asatru or Odinist Bible. And that's not our purpose. That's never been the point of what we're trying to do. We're not trying to create a centralized dogma or a centralized doctrine. And what's interesting to me is a lot of the people who have criticized our work the most vehemently typically like to come at us as if we are not allowed at the table, right? Then that's the problem that I have. You can criticize our work. It's fine. We want you to. We want you to read our books. And that's this book right here, the Asatru Edda. And I'm using this first edition to make a point, but I'm going to go into that in a minute. But this first edition is the first printing that we had of the Asatru Edda. And there were some mistakes. Okay, sorry about that. So we have this Asatru Edda that we put together, right? And what this is the epic school of mythology right here. This is what we're trying to develop. Now, when we use the term sacred text, we're simply saying that the lore itself is sacred to us. It's something that's religious. And we put this together not as a way to aggrandize ourselves or try to say that we're gurus or tell people that you have to listen to us, you have to obey us or anything like that. It's simply saying that these are the words of the gods and the words of our ancestors. And we simply piece them together into a chronological order. And then we filled in the gaps where we had to, right? But that's because we can see an epic. We see the epic as part of the religion. And we see it as part of the belief system. And how we do that, basically how we develop the epic and how we see it, is we start with Voluspa. Voluspa obviously is sort of the blueprint for it all because it lays out the epic. It shows it from the beginning of Gununga Gap all the way to Ragnarok and shows all these different events. And then you can use a methodology in order to find all of the different events, all of the different things that happen throughout the stories, and then start to see them unfold and how things happen in sort of a logical progression, okay? And the first thing that we do is we see that the epic myths are built upon the Poetic Edda, right? And we see the Poetic Edda as the only heathen source that exists. Now, the thing is about this, right, and this is something that we've been talking about on Facebook and we're going to be making some more videos on, is that we have different mythological schools of thought, right? And the other schools of thought that have existed, that are primarily used in the academia, have been developed from these different, patterns and these lines of reasoning that basically put the Poetic Edda on par with the Prose Edda. But there's a problem with that, okay? And that's what's muddied the waters a little. I don't know why I keep having connection issues. But so the biblical school is probably the most damaging for us because it basically put in this idea that the Poetic Edda is all Christianized too, right? But there's no evidence of that. And basically the biblical school's premise was that if it looks like Christian ideas or sounds like Christian ideas or might be remotely connected to anything Christian at all, then it must be Christian. And these ideas have gone into all kinds of crazy routes. I mean, all kinds of things where they say like when Odin hangs upon the world tree, that's really Jesus on the cross, that Jormungandr is really Leviathan, that Balder is like a Jesus myth. I mean, it's all just these different connections and these ways to just basically make nothing out of nothing. And it's a deconstructive method. It's basically saying the Poetic Edda is useless or it's a Christianized source. And that's really done a lot of damage to heathenry because heathens themselves believe this. They think that the Poetic Edda is a Christianized source and therefore can see it as being equal to the Prose Edda. Now, the Prose Edda is not equal to it because it's a euhemerized, Christianized source, right? And Snorri says it. He says it in the very beginning, I am a Christian, I believe in God and Jesus and all that stuff. And he lays out the euhemerist method that we can trace back to Lactantius and Cyprian, who were like, contemporaries with Constantine and the development of the Roman Empire into a Christian empire. And so this method, it really fell apart. It didn't work. And it was actually the founder of our school, Victor Rydberg, who challenged Sophist Bugge, who was the founder of the biblical school, and told him that, this method doesn't work and you're just making anything into anything that you want. And so Rydberg's, basically writing on Bugge's work and Dr. Bang's work, who was, connected to Bugge, he so soundly defeated the biblical school that the biblical school ceased to exist. It doesn't exist anymore. It's not even around. It's not even considered a valid school of thought. However, the problem is that it's been sort of peppered in. It still influences scholarship. It still influences a lot of thinkers and a lot of people out there. So they use biblical theories and biblical ideas in order to cherry pick the lore. Anytime they see something they don't like, they simply say that it's Christian, right? Like when they look at the concept of damnation, they say, well, damnation shouldn't exist because that sounds like Christianity. So when we see a concept of damnation in Voluspa, that has to be Christianity because it sounds like Christianity. Well, that's not a research method. That's garbage. That's nothing. It doesn't even represent any sort of methodological research at all. It's simply saying, it's basically an emotional response to it. It's saying, because I have this emotion, I have this idea of thinking about this and this way of viewing this, then it must be this, right? And that you can't even ascertain anything from that, all right? And that's why the school was so readily defeated, because what happened is Victor Rydberg and then later Dumazil and other researchers started making Indo-European comparisons and then finding these patterns within those comparisons and basically defeated a lot of these other schools. Rydberg also defeated the nature school and pretty much made it irrelevant, right? And so the Indo-European school, it arose and became the prominent school. And what we should do is we should see these other schools and recognize them for who they are, and then start to push away from their research, okay? Now, that's where the Epic School came in, because we started to, when you see the Indo-European line of research and you see how it connects and different ideas connects, and you build an epic from that, because you start with the whole principle that the Poetic Edda is the framework. The Poetic Edda is the beginning of it all. And we start with that framework, and we don't let anything after that contradict it, okay? So one of the criticisms that was recently brought forth on our book was our discussion on the Scythe. We were told in a video by Erith Harger, and I'm not here to denigrate him, or he has his opinion, he has his viewpoint, but he said that, because we say that Scythe is black magic, that means our book is a fantasy book, that we just made up all this stuff, right? But in Voluspa, the only heathen source we have that talks about Scythe, it says that Scythe is black magic. And so any other source after that, and I mean, Inglinga Saga says it's black magic. It says it's used to bring about the death, ill luck, and insanity of other people, right? And then there were, Harold Bluetooth, I think, he said he hated Scythe workers, and there was sagas that mentioned that, negative, viewpoints on the Scythe. And then there are a couple later ones that say maybe it was positive, they don't know, it was kind of maybe they did, or trust them or didn't trust them or whatever, right? But these were written several hundred years after Voluspa, right? And I think that the convolution that Snorri made, where he talks about some Scythe workers practice spacecraft or prophecies looking into the future, is really what started to convolute it all, right? But the fact of the matter is if we see the Poetic Edda as the heathen source, then no source after that can contradict that, right? And that's the principle, that's the idea, that's what we built that upon. And that's research. That's how you do academic research. And that's how you see these things. Now, in this book, okay, and this is why I wanted to mention this book, to discuss this version of the Astra Edda. We're actually going to repackage this, because I understand that this information, in order for us to put out this information properly, that we need to be able to show people what we're doing, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to eventually repackage this as the reference edition of the Astra Edda. It's the first edition. It was basically from a publisher and that we didn't really like, and we're trying to move away from them. We have some better books coming out. We have better things going on and better publishers that we're working with. But the thing about self-publishing is they only allow so many pages in your book. So, and having so many pages, you can only fit so many things in there. And we wanted to make, the later editions something that people can study, so we put the passage index in there, we put we still have the glossary and all that stuff, but we removed the endnotes so it's not an academic work, it's not something that's just strictly academic. We want to show people the academic work that we put into this, but we don't want the work itself to be an academic book, because I'm not out here to be an academic. I'm not a representative of a university. philosophy. I'm here as a scholar, as an amateur scholar, presenting these theories and these ideas and the works of Victor Rydberg and building the epic school, because I believe that it's a very important school for our religion. I believe that it's a very important school for us to develop this way of life. Not only because it allows us to reconstruct this lore and make it re-heathenize it and bring heathenry back into the forefront, but also because it allows us to see the pieces of the puzzle throughout the entire culture. All of it. We are rebuilding everything. We are doing projects that are rebuilding our folk songs, where we've actually discovered folk songs from ancient times that we can use today. We are looking at diet, recipes and stuff like that. We're looking at dances, we're looking at nature, we're looking at all these different fundamentals, and we're using the epic method of piecing these things and finding these lines of convergence. And we're going to present all of these theories and ideas and showing people how we can reconstruct the whole thing, all of it, not just the lore, okay? So one thing I want to show people in here, and something that's very important, is if you get this first edition, you'll notice that in the end of it, we have all of these endnotes, right? There's over 50 pages of endnotes here. Every single passage in the Asatru Edda in this first edition shows you all of the research that we did. All of these are pages. I know the lighting makes it hard to see, but you see notes starts right there, and then I think let's see, it ends right there. So it starts on page 281 and ends on page 330, okay? That's a lot of notes. That's a lot of research. That's a lot of work that was put into this to show exactly what we did, okay? Now here's the thing. And another thing that was brought about our work in our book, and the other theories, you're like Inanna is the moon goddess, and some of the other things that we've put in here, we can back all of this stuff up with research, and we can. Anybody wants to ask us any questions, email me, mark.norrena@gmail.com. It's mark.norrena@gmail.com. I can answer any question you have, any research you want to see, I will show it to you easily, okay? But the one thing that was brought about, the one thing that I want to really talk to people about, is that we were criticized for saying that heathens have to move away from academia, right? And there's a reason why we say that. There's a very specific reason why we tell people that, okay? It's because the academics have told us that their way is the only way, okay? An interesting thing in Eric's video that was really interesting to me, and it really shows a sort of mentality towards this, right? Is that he picked up a book by Diana Paxson, and he said that book was okay, that book was okay to write something like that, because she basically says that she's making this up as she goes, and that's okay to do, all right? Now, like I said, I'm not here to disparage Erith, his opinion, but what he's doing is he's falling into the trap of the idea that heathens, pagans, are not allowed to endeavor in any of this stuff, okay? If you want to write stuff about rituals and runes and magic, stuff that we know you're making up, things that you can just play with and have fun with, that's okay. But you're not allowed to touch the academic work. It's not, you can't do that. You're stepping over a boundary there, right? And you know what that is? That's dogma. That's what that is. That's establishing a dogma. You're accusing us of trying to create like excuse me. Sorry about that. Accusing us of trying to create a dogma, which we're not trying to do. We're trying to create sacred lore. When we say this is a sacred text, we're putting it along lines of like the Shinto Kajikis and the Rig Veda and the Codex of Madrid and the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Sacred writings are a good thing. That's good polytheistic belief. And developing different schools of thought around those sacred writings is a good, positive thing. And all other polytheistic cultures do it. To say that we don't is ridiculous. But I'll tell you what is following the monotheistic line of thought is telling people that there's only one way to practice this religion. And that's what academics have been telling you, that their way is the way. You have to listen to them because they have the letters behind their name. And now what we have done over the years is we've shown people this research and shown how there have been times when academics have just made a decision. It wasn't based on a founding. It wasn't based on like a line of reasoning that proved without a shadow of a doubt. We proved it. They didn't do that. They didn't do that. They just decided. They just came together and said, we decided. And a lot of that happened after World War II, when a lot of German culture began to be demonized. And that demonization allowed them to say, hey, we can decide this. We can say what is and what isn't. right? And that's what happened. And that's why I say we have to move away from the academia. And the Hindus, who I talk a lot with Hindu people, they will tell you straight up that they don't allow academics to touch their works because they don't want them to. Stay away from our stuff, okay? And so we see it as like a Stockholm syndrome type thing, you know? It's like a thing where you know, these people, we're going to follow this line of thought. And stay tuned to our channel. If you haven't seen the videos I've done on Facebook, stay tuned to our channel because I'm about to start making a series of documentaries on the mythological schools of thought. And we're going to show how this all lines up and goes right back to the conversions and is developed through that. And their research is just because the people who oppose this religion were the first ones to get the documents in their hand. And so what we're saying is that the epic school of thought is a polytheistic heathen school of thought. And we have the right to be at the table. And when I say we, I mean you. If you're a heathen, if you follow this path, you have a right to have a say-so on what goes into the lore. You have the right to have a say-so in what you believe and what you follow. And you can't just say, well, because he's an academic, he has letters behind his name, that what he says goes. I'm not saying that his research is invalid. I'm not saying that anybody's research is invalid. We follow research. We follow academics. We follow scholarship. We read their books. We've probably read more of their books than anybody. I mean, William Reeves is one of our major contributors, and I'm telling you right now, there isn't a book on this stuff that he has not read, right? And so we follow the lines of thought. We follow the lines of reasoning. And the thing is that we're developing a school of thought called the epic school. We are epicists. And if you believe in this line of reasoning, you are an epicist. And if you're a heathen, you have a right to have a say-so on these fundamentals, on these beliefs, on these different aspects of this culture. You have a right to say so. And when people come to you and say you don't have a right, how dare you? How dare you not follow what we are saying, right? Then that is a dogma. That is monotheism. That is Christianity. That is what they did. And so when people come and they try to use buzzwords like sacred text, you're writing a sacred text. How dare you? You're Abrahamic, right? That's not Abrahamic. That's followed in polytheistic religions all around the world. But coming to people and saying, how dare you do something that because we've been doing it, because we don't want you to make us irrelevant, that's the problem, right? And that's when you're breaking away from heathenry. That's when you're breaking away from the belief system of being polytheistic. Because other religions, like the Hindus have pointed out, my good buddy Drew Bapal, he pointed out they have the mathas, which are their schools of thought, and they all agree, like, hey, that's your interpretation? Go for it, buddy. And they sit there and they'll debate with each other and talk about it, but it's all in a good spirit, and they all believe in the same foundation, and they all build those schools of thought, and they appreciate each other's different viewpoints. Same thing in Shinto, right? The idea is that we try to follow a line of reasoning and build a similar foundation upon a certain principle of ideas, but then the interpretations go in many different directions. Many different directions. That's the definition of polytheism. All right? So thank you. You guys have a great night, and stay tuned to what we're doing because we're going to definitely be presenting all of these mythological schools of thought in the future, and we're going to start showing you guys the flaws in this research, and we're also going to show you how you can take heathenry into the future for yourself, for your family, and your folk. Hail the gods.